Hey, we're back here on Fox 59 tonight with Zach Meyers from the Fox 59 Morning Show. On the weekend, he is the. I wonder. Let me think. Zach, I think you're probably the only person still here in this building who is anchoring a show that they launched.
Hmm. Boy, well, on Fox 59,
Well,
possibly.
on Fox 59, because technically Bob
Yeah, I guess
launched
Bob
CBS 4.
on CBS 4, but on Fox 59, maybe? Because
Yeah.
there were anchor crews before, even on the morning show,
Mm-hmm.
before Angela
Uh-huh.
and some of those.
Yeah. She's been
On the
around.
team.
She's not, but
Yeah,
she's not. She didn't launch it.
yeah. No,
Uh,
the weekend show launched in August of 2010. So we're coming up on 15 years
mm-hmm.
for that. And it was a solo show for 4 years, and then Jessica Hayes joined,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was Melissa Crash
Mm-hmm.
and Sierra.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jillian filled in for a while too on the show, and
Mm-hmm.
that was fun. So um, yeah, it's just been kind of feel like my baby
Well,
of
not a lot of.
some sorts.
There's been a lot of people who work in a station, but not a lot of people can say I launched that show.
I guess not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't see it when you say 15 years. It seems like a long time. And when I look at pictures from back then of some of the stuff we did, I was like, oh, I didn't have any gray hair. It was all black, and I looked a lot younger. So, yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
It's worked out for you. I can. It's a very short list of people who have been here longer than you. Russ
Hmm.
McQuaid,
Yep.
Bob Donaldson,
Hmm.
and our on air folks.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Brian Wilkes and
Brian Wilkes,
um,
Angela. Does she have you
Angela.
beat?
She does. She was here a few years, I believe, at least a couple years before I was
Um,
here. Let's see, you said Russ, Brian, Bob,
mhm.
um, Angela. I'm
Li-
probably going to forget someone and feel bad later, but that's who's coming to mind right now.
I think that's it. Now, granted, we've had some people who've been here for a while, but longer than
Yes. Well, and you've
22.
got like directors like Dave Mason and some
Yes,
folks who work on the technical side who've been here for a long, long time.
since almost day one, which I believe Dave was.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard to imagine, especially now, uh, in the TV industry or anywhere, people don't stay at jobs that
Yeah.
long anymore.
Yeah.
How did you? Did it just happen? Like how did you survive for 22 years in TV, one station?
It's part of it. I feel like the job is over 20 years, the job has changed enough. It's kind of felt like different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the same building, and they were fairly new in this building when I came here,
Mm-hmm.
moving from the downtown location. Um, but from when I started doing morning live shots, we were still operating out of one of the news vans
Mm-hmm.
with the
With
mast,
the
microwave
mast.
mast going up, and you had to be tethered, cable plugged in,
Mm-hmm.
which really limited us quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
in what we could do. I remember covering things from the state house would be feel like a nightmare some days,
Mm-hmm.
because we would be inside and we'd have to run
Run off.
outside to the truck, and it's February or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is and the weather's brutal. Or if we're covering something, covering weather is one thing, like if it's snowy and bad weather, but I think it's almost worse covering something else in that same weather, like if
Yes.
it was a big, unfortunately, like a big homicide crime scene,
Mm-hmm.
and you're dealing with weather
Mm-hmm.
conditions, just the cables get
Mm-hmm.
stiff in the
Mm-hmm.
cold,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. So when I look back on that compared to things we do now, which have their own challenges, but I
Mm-hmm.
think technically in a lot of ways are simpler and easier to deal with. Um, it almost doesn't feel like I've been in the same job for 20 years. It's almost like several different jobs in the same location. But a lot of it has had nothing to do with the job here. Also, life outside the building
Mm-hmm.
has moved along,
Mm-hmm.
getting married, having kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're we're sort of rooted. Our kids are at Center Grove
Mhm.
schools. My wife's, my Heather's law practice is based in Greenwood, and so those are just more reasons to just sort of feel like we've got roots planted here. This is home. This is home base,
Mhm.
and things have worked out here at the station. But I feel like that if I weren't here, I would still be in the area, maybe doing something else
Mhm.
or something related.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the days of chasing a TV job from market to market are
Mhm.
far behind me.
Mhm.
But it's just as different challenges come about, you weigh the pros and the cons, and you think, is this still what I love to do, even though I don't like this part of it?
Mhm.
And if the answer is yes, then then you end up doing it. And I think that's been what it has been for me. It's just the pros have outweighed the cons
Mhm.
uh, each time around. And I when you really boil it down, I do still really, really love what I do.
So, did you ever think one day that's going to be me on the Today Show, or
Mm,
I'm going to anchor in New York City or some big market?
yeah.
Did you ever have those aspirations?
Early on, I did, sure. Especially being at an NBC affiliate in Fort Wayne,
Mhm.
I would see Brian Williams on the screen and be
Mhm.
like,
I love Brian Williams, man.
and I was like, I could do that. I know, give me a couple decades of experience, and
Mhm.
I can do that.
Mhm.
So I really had no ceiling, put no ceiling on myself and my potential. And so yeah, I had those times,
Mhm.
and there are still times when I feel like, man, if I wanted to do that, it'd be interesting to see where it led.
Mhm.
But I'm so just in love with my life here.
Mhm.
Um, at at the station, but
Mhm.
also outside the station here,
Mhm.
just locally. That I'm like, this, I can do that, and that's
Mhm.
what I'm gonna do.
Have you ever got the call from one of these big cities to say, "Hey, we saw you in Indianapolis. You ever thought about coming here?"
That was pretty early on too. They're, I guess, what headhunters and
Mhm.
out there, and I used to get calls from different agencies before, like, hey, would you be interested in this, or but I will say I've never had an agent. I've
Mhm.
always just done my own
Mhm.
stuff, because just me personally, I didn't like the idea of also giving
Giving
up a
somebody some money.
portion of my own earnings. Yes. Uh, but I know that that's also helped a lot of people. There definitely pros and cons to
Mhm.
weigh there also, and I'm not dogging that. It wasn't the route that I took.
Mhm.
um, but I think there would have been more of that if I'd had an agent
Mhm.
who it's their job to sort of constantly be on the lookout.
So they can get more of your money, but
But
it benefits them.
so there probably would have been more of that. But I haven't been approached by anyone in some time, for several years, because um, I feel like I'm established enough just here, and it's
Mhm.
pretty clear. Oh, Zach's gonna he's
Mhm.
gonna stay where he's at.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's a Zach story? And what I mean by that is a Cameron story is anything with transportation, logistics.
Mm,
A Russ story, something happening with the mayor, something
hmm
in the city. A Jesse story is crime. What's a Zach story?
That's another reason why I feel like I've gone through phases,
Mm-hmm.
because in the early times when I first came here, I tended to cover a lot of politics.
Mm-hmm.
After a few years, it switched to a lot of crime coverage, uh, and now like Jesse Wells does a lot of that for us.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it was more of a switch to, like, oh, just sort of like the beat on the South Side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then since my role has changed again, I'm more consumer based stories, a lot of scams,
Mm-hmm.
the things,
Mm-hmm.
the money
You
matters
got your own
stories.
segment.
Don't click the link,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these days, I would say a Zach story would be probably more that route.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I even get emails and calls, like, "Hey, does this look like a scam to you?"
Mm-hmm.
Chris Wright on CBS 4 the other day emailed me and said, "I just got this. It looks kind of suspicious." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, that's totally a
Mm-hmm.
scam."
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's kind of my thing now. Um, but I would say anything either having to do with that, or I do still stay in touch with my contacts and sources south of Indianapolis in the Johnson County area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of those stories I would say would be a Zach story. Um, if I guess if there was a scam on the South Side, that'd be perfect right up your
Yes, yes.
alley. But it's also different too because in my role now as I'm something in between reporter and anchor. It's
Mhm.
what we call a floating anchor,
Mhm.
uh, covering developing type stories.
Mhm.
And I do most of my work in the building in house.
Right.
So it's different from the days of going out and work in a neighborhood,
Mhm.
door knocks. I'm
Mhm.
not, I guess, on the street as much as I used to be. So that has
Which
kind
are
of,
you okay with that?
I am, there are days when I guess kind of miss it. There are some days when it was kind of fun going out and get neighborhood reaction to things.
Mhm.
But and I'm sure you can relate when it's 15 degrees outside. That's
Yeah,
less
no, I won't
appealing.
be out there. Then no,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
okay.
That's part of it too. But there are still days when I would enjoy going out and doing some weather coverage and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, just being here in the building more and covering things from here does change what a Zach story would be. But
Mhm.
I'd say definitely the money matters type stories are mostly what a Zach story would be.
And how did that come about that you ended up being the consumer reporter? Was
Mm.
that something that was uh, assigned to you, or was it like, Zach, what do you like to do?
It was not really a sign, but it was something that came up for a while. I was anchoring the morning show on our sister station CBS 4
Mhm.
for several months over the summer. Sorry, I have an eyelash up.
I understand
Over
that.
the
Been there.
summer for about 4 months or so,
Mhm.
and I was anchoring the show, but also looking for something else to do to turn like a weekly type
Mhm.
segment or
Mhm.
type feature type thing, and that started off as For Your Money. And then when I came back to working on both stations and working in the floating anchor role,
Mhm.
that sort of morphed into Money Matters for Fox 59.
Mhm.
And so that's just kind of how it came about. And instead of doing a weekly piece that was a bit more involved, I turned it into something I could turn for each day shorter, less involved. It may
Mhm.
have an interview, may not,
Mhm.
or may just be here. Here's what you need to know about this that's going on.
Mhm.
Sort of quicker and easier to turn around. Um, it's never going to be lead story material, but it might make you think twice about clicking on that link that you got on that scammy text message or something.
Right.
Just sort of relatable, talkable stories, and it's not all scams. This week I'm talking about things. Oh, I'm looking at how much, on average, uh, people are spending on cable and internet
Mm.
services these days.
Mhm.
What the
Mhm.
average price of. Um, and if you think you're spending too much, what are some things maybe you can do to bring it down a little? um, things like that. So just sort of like things to help you either protect your money from like a scam or save you some money,
Mhm.
or just maybe reevaluate where you're spending your money. And literally money matters, just anything about money.
Well, I'll be interested to see that story because I was actually, we've got the all the talk about the Pacers and the NBA Finals and the ratings over that. Uh, the ratings have apparently been lower than they have been in past years,
Mm,
and people gave a list of reasons why.
mm,
A lot of it is because how much everything is being geared and pushed toward things like YouTube TV
yeah,
and Amazon, and it's moving away from cable and things like that. And so I'd be interested to see your story
yeah.
because I don't subscribe to like YouTube TV or anything because the prices are just way too high.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what are we really getting that's better that I wasn't getting from cable?
Yeah, if your cable is also your internet service and you have that kind of stuff bundled,
Mhm.
for some people it may these days compared to cutting the cord.
Mhm.
Okay, cutting the cord's fine, but then
Mhm.
you do still need if you're going to stream,
And still need your
you
internet.
still need your internet. That's going to be that.
Mhm.
And then start adding on your subscriptions.
Mhm.
Um, we actually do use YouTube TV and streaming at home,
Mhm.
but when you look at the cost of just the internet plus the YouTube TV and add it up, sometimes that can be as much or more than what you're getting for cable. So it's
Mhm.
almost like they've figured out how to keep getting about the same amount. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
And
So
telling you it's something different and
yeah.
better.
So that's why it's this study that was done is basically saying cable and internet, because nowadays they're almost becoming virtually the
Synonymous.
same function.
Yeah.
Um, and I can give it away because I think this story would have aired by the time we're on.
Yes.
So um, the average bill for that in the U.S. right now is $121, and but our internet service at our home is less than that,
Mhm.
obviously.
Mhm.
But then if you start adding in subscriptions,
Mhm.
you're approaching that.
Mhm.
So it's interesting, and to see where Indiana stacks up
Mhm.
compared to other states. Different parts of the country are more expensive than others.
So you are the consumer reporter now with For Your Money and Money Matters. That's what you're doing now. But in the 20 it's 22 years, right?
Just 20,
Just 20.
years. Yep.
Okay. Just
Hmm.
20. In the 20 years that you've been here, what's been the most memorable story you've covered?
Oh, most memorable story that I've covered. Um, Getting to interview then Senator Barack Obama
Mm.
live on the air. He was campaigning for the '08 election,
Mhm.
and he made a stop in Greenwood at the Four Winds, right
Okay.
there along 135.
Mhm.
And we were there for live coverage of that.
Mhm.
And
Because you knew he was going to go there.
yes, it was a campaign stop that was announced and it was arranged and media was invited.
Mhm.
So we were able to do live reports from inside the diner as he was eating up here at the table,
Mhm.
and just talking to people. And you know
Mhm.
how he does with crowds. He's
Mhm. Mhm.
genius. And he then we were sort of moved outside and we were going to watch his departure,
Mhm.
getting into the motorcade where they were going. And his press guy walked up to me while we're not on the air,
Mhm.
and he just said, "Hey, do you want him for a minute?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Sure, yeah, you bet." So I uh, texted our producers like, "Hey, he's going to come out here and literally talk to us." And what was so great was even at that time, our morning show was longer.
Mhm.
We were the only ones still on the air.
Ah.
So we were standing on the air, just sort of chatting with the
Mhm.
anchors
Mhm.
and saying, "Hey, he's going to walk out here, and we're expecting to be able to talk to him."
Mhm.
And then as I'm doing that, you could see him come out over my shoulder, and he
Mhm.
walked right up to me, shook my hand, and we stood there and we talked. And he did. It was more than a minute. It was a
Mhm.
good 4 or 5 minutes
Mhm.
that he was just able to talk about the campaign, make his pitch to Indiana voters,
Mhm.
and that was one of the most memorable day. And then we just hung on that live shot. I think it was like an 8 minute live shot.
Is that clip somewhere?
Oh gosh, I don't have it. I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure we have it somewhere. But it was so it was a good example of how our team handled live TV in its purest sense.
Mhm.
They blew out that whole block and said,
Mhm.
"We're going to sit on this.
Mhm.
And as long as he's still here, 10 feet from me, shaking hands and talking to people, we're going to stay on the shot."
Right, right.
And then he finally got into the vehicle and they pulled off. That was one of the most memorable days. It was just,
Cuz
right,
you
right time, right place. It was great.
right time, right place. You're the only one on the air. Everybody else is there. Now, were all other reporters, were they watching like, "Now, how did you get?"
I can imagine. I don't know, but it wasn't anything special we did. It was just because we were there and we were
Mhm.
still on the air, and standing there just ready to go. Um, so yeah, that was cool. Then Senator Obama, and then
Mhm.
of course he went on to win. Um, that
Which he won Indiana that year. It could have been
yeah,
his exposure from your live interview that put him over the top.
maybe it was it. I mean that there was a you know pretty pretty awesome election cycle that
Uh-huh.
whole year.
Mhm.
Um, Boy, some there have been some rough ones.
Mhm.
Ones that stuck with me for a while. Early on, I was covering a homicide, and we were doing live shots. And let's see, I was trying to go door to door and try to track down someone who may have seen something or
Mhm.
saw something happen.
Mhm.
And we knew, and so I was knocking on this door, not getting an answer. I gave it a couple knocks, and then I noticed something. And I looked down, and I was standing in a puddle of blood
Ooh.
that was almost dry,
Mhm.
not quite. And then I realized that was the door that the person who'd been shot had run to looking for help, and he died right
Oh,
there.
where you were standing.
Yeah, and it was that one stuck with me for a while, but just because
Yeah.
we cover these things, and there's sort of a natural barrier, I guess, between us and what's happened. We need to report on it, but not become part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was, over that line at that point, and just the thought of, man, this is where someone lost his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that one bothered me for a while.
Yeah. A lot of those stories, and we were covering a lot, especially when I was doing the morning show, a lot of crime. And unfortunately, a lot of times we get there just as the police are getting there,
Yeah,
and usually before the family. So it's fresh, it's raw. And if you're doing that day after day, for me, I did not like that after a while because
right.
we were doing so much of it. And I was unfortunately having to see dead bodies, and I'm
Mm,
there as the family is arriving and people are screaming. Then that starts to stick with you if you're doing it every day.
yeah,
And it was actually putting me in a very bad mood. So,
it can
um,
weigh on you, no doubt, especially if you're there and you're seeing family reacting over
yes.
here, and your heart breaks for them,
Mm-hmm.
of what they're going through, regardless of what happened.
What the circumstances
Someone
are.
over here is in anguish, and you
Mm-hmm.
just feel for them, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
That's
Let's
why
see.
Cameron stories are have nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, at the same time, we got the coolest opportunity one time to do. We were covering some firefighter training with the Fishers Fire Department,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a live burn exercise. And I guess I don't know if we could still do this today, but they gave us permission for me to suit up
Mm-hmm.
and go inside this house where they were having live fire burn exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It was up on the second floor of this house that they had basically bought, and they were prepared to burn down and
Mm-hmm.
demolish. Um, my photographer, and Dave Novak,
Mm-hmm.
was up on a ladder with the camera on his shoulder, and this is live, peeking in the window as we're crawling through this room on the second floor, and they were talking me through. So I had my microphone inside,
Because you're
my
suited up.
suited up completely with air. So on the air, you could hear me like,
Mm-hmm.
and then talk a little bit, and then
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I had my earpiece in so I could hear.
Mm-hmm.
Crawling on the floor, could not see a thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
broad daylight. I couldn't see my hand in
Mm-hmm.
front of my face, and all we could do was just sort of go until we could see, where the fire was.
Mm-hmm.
But they warned me. They said, stay down. If you stand up, it's about 200 degrees hotter than
Whoa.
where and they let me experiment with that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got up enough, like not even standing all the way up, but I
Mm-hmm.
stood up enough that my earpiece started heating up in my ear.
Ooh.
I could feel it getting warm. So I got back
Mm-hmm.
down. That was one of the coolest and humbling things
Mm-hmm.
to experience, because here I'm just in this room. I'm not doing anything to fight the fire
Right.
or try to search for survivors. Now they have thermal imaging where they can
Mm-hmm.
find people in the
Mm-hmm.
smoke. But I'll never forget. We went outside. I climbed down the ladder, and I didn't even those that gear that they wear is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even smell smoke until I took the helmet off outside, and I'm
Mm.
like, oh yeah, it's really smoky. I didn't smell it inside
Mm-hmm.
the gear. So that was some pretty awesome live TV.
Well, and it also gives you perspective, both you and on live TV, what the firefighters are looking for, but also you always ask, we wonder, why don't people get out? Like, why don't you get out? You can't see
You can't
anything.
see, and if I hadn't been in that gear, I mean, just breathing that in, it's not good.
Yeah.
Not it's easy to see how people succumb to the smoke inhalation
Mm-hmm.
and just the heat and not being able to see. Yeah, that was humbling. That was really eye opening.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got some memorable, some cool opportunities that you've had over your course of 20 years. What do you think? We got just a few minutes left. What do you think the next 20 years of being in if we're still in this building, but Fox 59 will be, because it's changed so much in the last 20 years?
Hmm. I think probably a lot more of this, what we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. Boy, you mean just
Just in
as a
general.
whole, or like me, what I'll be doing?
But well, both.
Well,
What do you one? What do you think the industry will be? Because I'm always thinking, what is it going to be? I almost feel like we're going to be just on the air. one 24 hours a day. We'll all be kind of like cable news,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be doing. The technology is getting there to where you can broadcast to like one part of the state. So
Right.
we're doing the Northwest Indiana news and the Northeast, and then we go to the South, and we're doing newscasts like that. I feel like we could be doing some variation of that.
It could be, or even, I mean, if we end up being like some sort of like central hub for that kind of thing. I know you already have some, I think, meteorologists doing forecasts for other markets.
Yes, you do.
And if you work under a station roof, that's not the kind of thing you want to hear,
Right.
because that means fewer people with jobs in the industry.
Hmm.
I I don't know if it's going to be that. What I will say is that I hope that this business is going to be about people,
Hmm.
and it takes people to make it happen.
Hmm.
The day they put up an AI anchor is not a day I want to see.
We're getting close on that,
I
Zach.
know, I know.
Have you seen the AI influencers that are now starting to pop up?
Yeah,
And you can't really tell that they're not real people.
sometimes it's hard. It's hard. Even the ones that make themselves look like a little baby,
Yeah,
but they look very real.
yeah.
No, I mean, I think that is a scary thought. The fact that we're even thinking it though
Hmm.
means someone's working on it.
Hmm.
I think.
Hmm. I'm sure
Gosh,
somebody's
I mean,
working
we're
on it.
telling stories. I think you got crime, you got politics, you got, sports, weather, this and that. The common denominator
Hmm.
about every news story is it's about people.
Hmm.
And I think the business also should be about people because it takes people to tell those stories.
Hmm.
And AI can do a lot, but it'll never feel what we feel or feel what the people in the stories are
Hmm.
feeling.
Hmm.
And that sounds, I'm sure, altruistic, and it sounds, I guess idealistic, but I mean, I think the less people element you take out of
Hmm.
it, the less of a people business it is.
Well, Zach, we've got just about 2 minutes left, and I didn't get to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Uh, what is something that people would not guess about you?
What people would not guess about me, unless they've heard me mention it on the air, is that I'm a drummer since I was age 12. I was in a rock band through college. We were serious enough to record an album in Chicago, and
Hmm.
it went on sale at music stores in Bloomington. Our name was X-Ray Roger Jimmy, which is there's a whole story behind the name too. If you
Okay.
just remember X-Ray, it's but I still played drums.
Hmm.
I like to play when I can, when my schedule permits it, at our church in Greenwood at Mount
Hmm.
Pleasant Christian Church. I've got my electric kit set up at home, so I can keep the chops up.
Uh-huh.
Some Roland V drums, which are awesome, by the way. No, but that was something. When I was 12 years old, I think I wanted to be either Alex Van Halen, or a few years later, Will Calhoun from Living Color, who's one of the
Uh-huh.
phenomenal best drummers ever. Um, yeah, so my first original dream probably would have been to be a rock drummer with a successful band and make that my career. Uh, I'm here. I'm not a rock drummer for my career.
Well, I remember when I found out that you were one a drummer and two in a rock band. I was like, "What,
Yeah.
Zach?"
We're doing weekend mornings can knock the rock out of your life a little bit.
We didn't even get to any of your dad jokes either.
Oh, goodness.
Well, people will just have to tune into the weekend morning show.
We'll have them. We do one for each day.
That's what I've seen, and then you also have your show, the additional hour that airs on Fox 59 now. So
Yes.
tune in weekend mornings, 6 a.m. to 10. Well, now what? 10:30, 11.
On Sundays,
Yeah.
10:30 to 11, Fox 59 now, and from uh, oh no, 9:30 to 10:30 on
Uh huh.
Sundays.
All right.
10 to 11.
You'll
Yeah.
find you'll find Zach, Sierra, and the crew. That's going to do it for this edition of Fox 59 tonight. Zach, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a good night. We'll see you for the next time on Fox 59 tonight.